and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull Channel News Brief. And today is the 6th of August 2025, and the stories that I thought we should pay a little bit of attention to today are Chicago hospitals have decided to join the U.S. government's attack on trans youth, and Chicago Governor and J.B. Pritzker and the Attorney General Kwame Raoul are making excuses for why they're not doing anything to defend trans kids from a ban on care that is literally life-saving, despite the fact that they know perfectly well that it is life-saving and that their refusal to enforce Indiana laws that protect trans people from this sort of thing will cause trans kids to die. Meanwhile, the Economist wants us to be scared of Iran for a new reason. They're selling fruit and veg to the UAE, even though the US is illegally trying to block them from having any kind of trade relationships. Meanwhile, in a story that comes from Al Quds News Network, and will certainly shock quite a few people, a German football club actually cancelled an Israeli striker who had been going to sign with the club because he publicly supported the genocide in Gaza. When even a German football club is just taking an anti-genocide stance, or at least not wanting to take a pro-genocide stance, things clearly are changing. Meanwhile, Palestine Deep Dive has an interesting story on British spy flights over Gaza and the U.S. company that is connected to them. From Mondo Weiss, Democrats attempt to navigate Israel's declining support among base as midterms loom. So let's just get started. The U.S. administration issued an executive order some time ago banning life-saving healthcare for trans youth, banning federal funding for life-saving healthcare for trans youth for facilities that provide it. Banning federal funding for facilities that provide life-saving healthcare for trans youth. Now, Illinois has largely been considered a safe state for trans people because of its human rights laws and various things. So people were rather surprised to find that Chicago hospitals, including University of Chicago Medicine, Lurie Children's Hospital, Rush University Medical Center, and others have either scaled back or outright stopped providing this life-saving care for trans youth. However, there is a rapid response team of volunteers looking to provide alternatives to trans youth who are at risk of losing their health care as a result of this. The group that is coordinating a lot of this is Trans Upfront Illinois. One doctor who is picking up the slack that has been left by these healthcare facilities in Chicago that have abandoned their responsibilities to their trans patients and are in violation of Illinois law, is Jessica Dr. Lipinski. Quoting from the article, Dr. Jessica Lipinski is a family medicine physician in suburban Bloomingdale who opened her practice 3 years ago. More than 50% of her patients receive gender-affirming care, and since UChicago Medicine suddenly stopped this treatment for youth earlier this month, she said her phone has been buzzing with panicked parents. Lately, Lipinski's conversations with her patients have extended beyond their health. They ask about escape plans and safe places to live, including outside the U.S. It's very heartbreaking, she said. Lipinski doesn't take government-funded health insurance, including Medicaid, which covers people who are low-income or have a disability. She charges $150 a monthly membership fee for kids seeking gender-affirming care, and says she works with families who can't afford that. There's other information about alternatives for people who've been left in the lurch by these major Chicago healthcare providers in the article, and the link will be in the description. Asher McMahon of Transit Front, Illinois, commenting on the onslaught against trans people, and especially trans youth in the U.S., said, "We can't stop losing these kids. These hospital systems don't understand the gravity of these actions, and at our organization we deal with the repercussions of their actions." End quote. That's one reason trans advocates and families are calling on Democratic Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Attorney General Kwame Raoul to do more to protect trans rights. So often we see elected officials say they stand with us in private and public play the neutral, and we're seeing that now, McMahon said. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul has declined repeated requests, according to WBEZ Chicago, to explain how hospitals there are not violating the Illinois Human Rights Act, which prohibits healthcare providers from discriminating against patients because of their gender identity. He has, however, said in April that, quote, "You can't be said to be acting discriminatory when the federal government is holding a gun to your head." J.B. Pritzker has also defended the hospitals in their that have decided to abandon trans youth. Despite the fact that, as human rights groups have noted, these same politicians have publicly supported abortion care, including at press conferences alongside abortion providers, and joining in legal challenges to protect access. This seems to the full article is linked in the description. It seems to me that this is just another example of the Democrats taking the opportunity to just throw trans people under the bus. That we've seen versions of this going back to the Biden administration when they opened the door for these sorts of healthcare bans at the state level with their new ACA non-discrimination rulemaking, and the Surgeon General's statement that she opposed gender-affirming surgery for trans youth, something that is rare but in older teens is certainly occasionally done and is life-saving, with a regret rate that is pretty much the lowest for any medical procedure of any kind ever. This comes alongside things like Pick Me Sarah McBride talking about how we need to just be reasonable, and sometimes you have to compromise on basic civil rights, and just because Nazis don't want to recognize trans people's civil rights and would like trans people not to exist, well, I mean, that doesn't mean they're bad people and shouldn't be listened to. And since she started defending that sort of shit, we've seen Democrats just coming out of the woodwork, like Rahm Emanuel, also of Chicago, or say Gavin Newsom, to join the attack on trans people. despite the fact that actually polls show that trans people's rights are more popular than the pricks who are obsessed with taking them away. It is really remarkable. Turning to the most absurd scaremongering about Iran I think I've ever seen, and that is saying something. We have the Economist, forbidden fruit. We uncover the secret food trade that corrupts Iran's neighbors. See, by corrupt, you have to understand that means not that the neighbors, they're becoming less corrupt. They're not acting as just puppets for the West. They are potentially being willing to take an independent stance. So they refer to Iran's greenhouse offensive. This is great because, the regimes that the Economist supports are literally starving people to death right now. But actually, the really scary thing is that Iran has a greenhouse offensive, which means that they're selling fruit and vegetables to people. The veggie melon hegemon is one of the subheadings of this article. This strategy, the numbers suggest Iran's strategy is proving wildly successful. It already dominates the market for 15 commodities in the UAE, from aubergines to melons. The story is similar in a smaller scale in Oman and Qatar. Volumes are soaring, quality is improving too. Oh wow, and apparently Iran now excels at the cherry tomato, which really must piss off Israel because they like to pretend they invented it. And that means they get to do genocide. Now, the thing to understand is that there's literally nothing illicit about buying produce from Iran. It's not illegal. What is actually illegal are what are called sanctions. They're called sanctions in order to make it sound like it's something, that it's some sort of legal action that's been taken. But it's just the U.S. and various U.S. proxies have unilaterally decided to carry out economic warfare against Iran that has actually been quite deadly, has resulted in a lot, lots of problems there in terms of just obtaining basic supplies that they need over the years. This is not just, there is no legal justification for doing it, of course, because the whole idea is to get Iran to give up their right under the Non-Proliferation Treaty to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes. And it is just particularly buck wild, given that Iran has now just been the victim of U.S. and Israeli just outright aggression. The aggression of two regimes that are involved in the most openly admitted genocide of the modern era, really. The crushing dominance of Iranian produce, facilitated by local firms, also makes a mockery of government plans to revive homegrown agriculture, something that it's worth noting that the Economist usually doesn't particularly care about. It's like the Economist is fine with the U.S. or Western Europe dumping on third world agricultural markets. Never complain about that. That's cool. That's free trade. That's the free market. If people in Mexico starve because the U.S. just dumps huge amounts of agricultural exports on them, then that's just, that's how the market works. But Iran sells fruit and veg, and suddenly it's lustig. Again, full article will be linked. In this case, to get around the paywall, it will be an archive.is link, because fuck the Economist. in the description. Now, when I saw this on Quds News Network, I just thought this was really shocking, actually, just because it's Germany. And Germany is just the most fanatically Zionist ruling class probably on the world, possibly even rivaling Israel itself. Like, the degree to which you can just be falsely accused of anti-Semitism over complete bullshit in Germany, it just outstrips any place. Okay. So, to quote from the article, Israeli striker Sean Weissman will not be joining German 2nd Division club Fortuna Düsseldorf, the team announced Tuesday, citing his social media post supporting the ongoing genocide in Gaza. In one post, Weissman called to wipe Gaza off the map. Weissman also said charming things like, in October 2023, asking, "What's the logical reason the 200-ton bombs haven't been dropped on Gaza yet?" He also said that there are no innocents in the strip and responded to a photo of 2 Palestinians abducted by occupation forces, writing, "Why the hell aren't they being shot in the head?" Yeah, he's a lovely chap. A lovely guy. I'm surprised that he hasn't been offered a cabinet post in Germany, actually. But apparently, some people at least are feeling the pressure, because in Germany as well, Israel polls like shit. Like, I mean, the government, the whole ruling class is fanatically supportive of this genocide, but the general public overwhelmingly opposes it. And that's also why suddenly, even just absolute ghouls like Friedrich Merz are suddenly discovering that maybe something untoward might be going on in the Gaza Strip. And they're not doing anything about it, mind, but they're feeling the need to say things about it. Now, it turns out, now in Palestine Deep Dive, this is actually an article from 2 days ago. It turns out that the spy flights from the UK occupation base in Cyprus, in Akrotiri, have shifted to a plane leased by a company with billions in US military contracts. The company is called, what was it? Straight Flight Nevada Commercial Leasing LLC, based in Sparks, Nevada, which is a subsidiary of a really dodgy company called the Sierra Nevada Corporation, which is apparently the 53rd largest military contractor in the world back in 2021, and plays a major role in offering spy planes on a deniable basis to all sorts of US-backed regimes. For people interested in following the supply chain of these sorts of things, the new U.S. plane that is now assisting in the genocide in Gaza, which is a Beechcraft, what was it? $350 flew from Hagerstown Regional Airport in Maryland, about 70 miles from Washington, D.C., to St. John's in Newfoundland, to Keflavik in Iceland, Palermo in Sicily, via an hour stop at one, it doesn't say which Belfast airport, there are 2 of them. and then ended up at RAF Gaza. One interesting thing is that although these planes have been turning off their transponders before going to Gaza in order to offer a certain amount of deniability about what they're doing, one time they forgot, and we've got actually the flight path as a result of it, which was just circling around Khan Yunis for hours. Khan Yunis, of course, is one of the main foci of the genocide in Gaza at the moment, and also an area where Israel both likes to claim that they have some kind of operational control, and also an area where they keep getting smoked. Full link to the article will be in the description, as with all of these. Now, we have a follow-up on yesterday's discussion about how pro-genocide ghouls in the Democratic Party are on damage control mode after a poll showed that only 8% of people who vote for Democrats actually support the genocide Democrats are doing. This is from Democratic Majority for Israel, the voice of pro-Israel Democrats. Today, Democratic Majority for Israel President and CEO and just overall ghoul, Brian Romick, released the following statement. In recent weeks, we've seen a series of deeply troubling developments within the Democratic Party and progressive community that reflect a growing willingness to excuse or embrace rhetoric and policies hostile to the safety of Jewish Americans, to Israel and those who support its right to exist in peace and security. I mean, that's great. They're going with some old classics. The idea of equating Jews with the Zionist movement and the Zionist state, that's cute. It's anti-Semitic as hell, of course. And the idea that actually opposing the genocide is hostile to the safety of Jewish Americans, no, it fucking isn't. Just shut the fuck up. That clearly isn't working for you. When you've got 92% of people who vote for Democrats opposing the genocide, they've clearly worked. You can't have 98% opposition to the genocide without a significant number of Jewish voters in there also opposing the genocide, because Jews in the U.S. overwhelmingly vote for Democrats. This trend stands in contrast to the Democratic Party's proud tradition of standing up to anti-Semitism and hate and steadfastly supporting the U.S.-Israel relationship. In New York City, the city with the largest Jewish population in the world, Democratic mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani refused to condemn the use of the phrase "globalize the Intifada," a slogan widely recognized, which is a neat way of saying falsely claimed to be, as a call for violence against Jews. They're still doing this. And keep in mind, in New York City, Mamdani leads amongst Jewish voters. It's not even particularly close. Let's be clear. This phrase is not a call for justice or equality. Not that the Democratic Majority for Israel would ever support justice or equality in Palestine, mind you. In fact, they would oppose it if it were one. It is a call for bloodshed. Well, since when are they against that? We urge Mr. Mamdani to say so plainly and unequivocally, and to engage with Jewish New Yorkers, whether they supported him in the primary or not, in order to understand the community's legitimate fears and concerns. Okay, first of all, again, overwhelmingly they support him already. And second of all, if you want to talk about the safety of Jewish people in New York or the US in general, this sort of thing is something you actually, if you gave a fuck about that, actually, you wouldn't do this. Because this is just this sort of backhanded way, an underhanded way of blaming Jews in the U.S. for the genocide, whether or not they actually even support it. Because what you're doing is you're saying, oh, these people are saying that the genocide in Gaza is bad. Why are they threatening Jews? Like, that is just a way of saying that it's Jews' fault that this is happening, and it's not. In fact, the majority of Zionists in the world, by a factor of about 10 to 1, are white supremacist Christians who don't even like Jews. And also, anytime you hear legitimate concerns, you know that you're not hearing about legitimate concerns. That is always code for some fash bullshit. Anytime you hear that, it's like legitimate concerns about immigration, which is just another way of saying that Nazis don't like that there are immigrants. Or legitimate concerns about trans people. Nazis don't like it that there are trans people. There should be no place in our party nor our country for slogans that celebrate terror or glorify violence. Where would you go then? In North Carolina, Democratic Party leaders approved a resolution by hand vote calling for an arms embargo in Israel and falsely accusing the country of genocide and apartheid. Falsely. Yeah, everybody but, like, pro-Israel shills is lying. That's right, that's the line you want to go with. This resolution distracts from the urgent work needed to elect Democrats across North Carolina, which is what the state party should actually be focused on. Here's the thing. Very clearly, if you look at the polls, the way you and if you look at the 2024 election results, supporting the genocide polls like shit. If you want to actually get elected, and the people who are likely to vote for you are people who support Democrats, then yeah, you've got to at least give some lip service to opposing the genocide. In addition, this resolution is not just divisive, it is factually inaccurate and morally unserious. I know that must hurt, being accused of moral unseriousness by a pro-Israel shill group. It ignores Hamas's role in the October 7th massacre and the ongoing rocket attacks and hostage crisis. Hamas's role in the hostage crisis has been to try to get them back home. They made the first offer to do that back in October 2023, October 9th, in fact. Worse, the resolution was forced through without following the proper process and procedures, ignoring the valid concerns of many party members who sought a more thoughtful debate about, whether genocide is okay. Rather than building consensus to help elect Democrats, the resolution deepened divisions at a moment when the party should be united in favor of genocide. And at the National Education Association, it's really nice to hear how clearly scared these assholes are. Members voted to endorse a proposal cutting ties with the Anti-Defamation League, an organization with a long and bipartisan record of fighting hate and educating students about civil rights, anti-Semitism, and the Holocaust, and defending neo-Nazis and South African apartheid. None of these incidents occurred in isolation. Together they reflect a troubling pattern. The erosion of core pillars of the Democratic Party. It's like, if they wanted them to get elected, one of the first things they should probably do is not call genocide a core pillar of the Democratic Party. It is. It's a core pillar of the entire political system in the U.S. It's the country founded on genocide. the marginalization of pro-Israel voices across the progressive landscape. Well, I mean that's so weird that like people who are in favor of genocide are not getting can't be comfortable in a progressive landscape. Like, I mean, that's horrible that people who aren't progressive. The vast majority of elected Democrats in Congress and in governors' mansions are working to strengthen the U.S. Israel relationship and are fighting against the rise in anti-Semitism, which is like, I mean, if you wanted to fight against the rise against anti-Semitism, you wouldn't be doing the first thing that you mentioned. Democratic majority for Israel will continue working to assure that our party remains proudly pro-Israel, rooted in fact and principle, and unafraid to stand up against rhetoric and policies that cross those lines. The path forward demands courage, clarity, and conviction. Well, I mean, I agree, you should be convicted. I mean, incitement to genocide, for example. And Dumphy will not waver. In this moment, the Democrats must remain united in defending democracy and our shared values. The pro-Israel community has always been, and will always be part of that coalition, working together to ensure that our party reflects both our ideals and our commitment to a just, inclusive future for all. Yeah, I mean, that's the pro-Israel community right there. I mean, they're so big on a just, inclusive future. I mean, as long as there aren't any Palestinians in it, as long as, apartheid is okay. But it's just and inclusive. I mean, it just includes the things they want. Even, according to Mondo Weiss, even Richie Torres, who has just been one of the most ghoulish motherfuckers in Congress from the start of this genocide. I mean, there has not been a piece of pro-Israel propaganda too ridiculous for this guy to share it on Twitter. I am proud to have been blocked by him. Even he's now saying, quote, all parties, including the U.S. and Israel, have a moral obligation to do everything in our power to ease the hardship and hunger that's taken hold in the Gaza Strip. End quote. And he said that in an interview, apparently. And it's like, everything? So, like, order Israel to open the Rafah crossing? I mean, I'm guessing not. With midterms approaching, Mondo Weiss observes, it's no wonder that lawmakers are modifying their position on the issue, as polling has consistently affirmed that Israel is vastly unpopular among Democratic voters. A recent Gallup survey, which I talked about yesterday, shows that just 8% of Democratic voters support Israel's military actions in Gaza, and only 9% of Democrats have a favorable view of Netanyahu. And I mean, that is within the margin for error, but it's just so weird that you'd be less supportive of what you'd be. That sounds like there's like somebody who's like, I don't like the genocide that Netanyahu is doing, but I just think he's a great guy. I mean, and here we're seeing a little scam that it has been led by Bernie Sanders, who continues to refuse to acknowledge the genocide. He will be like the last person on the planet not to acknowledge the fucking genocide at this rate, which is to claim to be doing an arms embargo against Israel, except when you look at the fine print, it's only for offensive weapons, which is 5% of U.S. military aid to Israel. I mean, it's the same thing AOC did, where she was defending, funding the Iron Dome. On the campaign trail last year, Senator Angela Also Brooks, Maryland, said she would oppose any effort to condition weapon sales to Israel. The article goes on. However, she voted for both of the Sanders resolutions, which again leave almost all U.S. military aid to Israel intact. Also, Brooks said, Netanyahu and his government must immediately change course. In what way? No, uncertain. I remain committed to the U.S.-Israel relationship and my belief that the people of Israel have a right to defend themselves. In this moment, we must do everything in our power as a global community to get desperately needed aid to the people of Gaza. Who's blocking it? Who's blocking it, though, Angela? I mean, so we also have this Rhode Island Democrat, Jack Reed, who's also doing this ghoulish thing of pretending to care about the starvation, but also just lying about why it's happening. He says, the facts on the ground are that militarily they have significant tactical advantages that are sufficient enough to be able to effectively deliver food. So the question arises, why can't you get food in there and healthcare services and basically follow humanitarian laws? And the answer is, Israel's been saying quite openly. I mean, this isn't a secret. They've been saying it all along. They are denying food. It is deliberate. They celebrate that. They brag about that. They have been bombing the healthcare service. Why can't you get healthcare services in there? Well, they've been bombing that. They had healthcare services. Israel and the U.S. have been bombing those healthcare services, and Jack Reed has been voting to send weapons so that they can do it. The Mondo Weiss article also notes a Data for Progress survey that finds that New York City primary voters, 78% of them acknowledge that Israel is carrying out a genocide, and 63% believe the city should enforce the arrest warrant against Benjamin Netanyahu. 63% also say they support Zohran Mamdani's candidacy. And again, I mean, you can't get those kind of numbers, especially in New York, without a whole lot of Jewish Democrat supporters agreeing with those sentiments. So this idea that, opposing the genocide is making Jews unsafe it's just fucking bullshit. We also have a former Hillary Clinton communications director, Howard Wolfson, who was on this pro-Israel podcast, Israel from the Inside. He says, the war for hearts and minds over support for Israel has been lost. And, I mean, that is true. And anyone who tells you that we can't actually change where the Overton window is, I mean, anyone who tells you to be like, I mean, this is something you hear on trans rights too, because the politicians don't want to support it, and no matter who, basically, regardless of party at this point, either they're outright opposed or they don't want to publicly support the survival of trans people in the U.S. or Gaza or any or just about anything. You'll hear liberals saying that, oh well, you just have to kind of take what you're given, and no, you don't. Like, look at this. The reason these pro-Israel ghouls are suddenly changing their tune and making sort of what you could call a trial close to see if how little they can budge without and get back within the Overton window as it has been set by just the massive sea change in public opinion in the U.S. That is a testament to the fact that actually we have a lot of influence over what these assholes will say. And we need to use it. The reason they're saying this, the reason people like fucking, Richie Torres or this Jack Reed or also Brooks or any of them are suddenly pretending to care about the genocide at the same time as they're still lying about it. They're still just telling utterly ridiculous lies to avoid acknowledging that actually the reason that people in Gaza are starving is that the U.S. and Israel have deliberately decided over the period of 22 months now to starve them. But they're feeling the pressure. And the thing to do is keep increasing the fucking pressure. Because this situation, this genocide is still going on. And we have not, as a whole, done enough to stop it. The whole supply chain for it runs through this country. There are all sorts of options there. I think there's been a failure of imagination to a great extent, and a lot of fear, I think, is in there as well. And just a sort of a lack of confidence in our collective abilities to actually stop this thing. But there are options, and as long as the resistance in Gaza is fighting, and they are still fighting, in fact, the past couple of months have been the deadliest months on record for the IDF. Like, they are not letting up, and in fact, they are intensifying it, even as they themselves are also starving. As long as they're fighting, there's a fight to be had, and we need to find the ways to play our role in that as the people whose governability plays a decisive role in this. I mean, this genocide can't happen without the U.S., and this genocide cannot happen without governability being maintained in the U.S. The minute governability is lost, and governability in the U.S. has seen better days than the past 15 years. The minute it is really and truly lost, then the U.S. has to focus inward in order to avoid losing everything. And we'll probably have to make all sorts of concessions. That is the news brief for the 6th of August. And let me just say, my only source of funding for this and all of my other projects are my viewers and listeners and supporters, and I really appreciate all of you. If you would like to support my work, you will find links in the description for a one-off contribution via PayPal or my Patreon or my Substack. And it is all very much appreciated. I know everyone's kind of fucked at the moment, so I wouldn't want anyone who can't to feel in any way bad about not being able to, but if you can and you want to, just know I am extremely thankful. I will be streaming on Friday at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, and I look forward to seeing you then.